Great day, everyone. This is Jason Santos, and for today, we will start the discussion of agricultural economics. So, let's get started. For today, we will be covering the following subtopics from the introduction. We have the history of agriculture, the factors leading to farming, the farming language dispersal hypothesis, archaeological evidences, Philippine agricultural as of today. Now, for the history of agriculture, we all know that since time immemorial, agriculture has been part of the system in order to live. And it has been since the Neolithic age, Paleolithic age, 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, and up until the present. And there are a lot of historical books, literature that would prove the existence of agriculture in the past. Now, if we are going to ask as to how did it start in the Philippines, well, we can actually pinpoint it to many factors, and those are what we are going to discover in this very first discussion. Now, the means by which agriculture expanded in the Philippines is argued by many different anthropologists. So, there's been a debate. A lot of people or anthropologists are arguing how did it all start in the Philippines. However, there are proxy indicators and other pieces of evidences that allow anthropologists to get an idea of when different crops reach the Philippines. So that was their measure. When did these specific crops reach our country and how they have gotten here? Now, rice is an important agricultural crop, and today in the Philippines, many countries throughout the world import rice and other products from the Philippines. Now, until the end of Pleistocene, most people inhabiting the planet were hunter gatherers. Okay, between 8500 to 2500 AD, people transitioned to farming at different times and places around the world. So, originally, people were hunter gatherers, but there are many reasons as to why they have shifted from into farming. And what are those factors that led into farming? The first one would have to be climate change. Now, after 15,000 years ago, during the post glacial climate change, and at the end of the Pleistocene, this made the climate much more warmer. Thus, it led to an increase in the productivity of tropical layers of the earth. And in addition, the climate change led to severe cold periods that were not conducive for hunter gathering. So, cold periods did not allow for people to hunt and gather, and that also contributed in some parts of the world becoming more humid, thus increasing the production of uh, plants, okay, forestries, and the like. Okay. Now, areas like China and Levant, for example, began selecting for certain features in their crops that would allow them to persist through sporadic cold periods. So people began thinking of ways on how to survive on long periods where it's cold and they are not able to hunt. Okay, and farming has become one of the solutions. Another factor is the advantage of farming. When we talk of advantage of farming, okay, um, let's look at it this way. Okay, uh, people saw farming as a stable source of food. Okay, and because of that, it gives them a lot more conveniences and luxuries, such as starting their own family, not moving frequently, okay, and not having to worry about hunting, okay, because if they are able to find a location where they can sustain crop production, then it ensures them a source of food for a certain year's worth of cycle. Okay. Now, one advantage was that farming yielded more food per area. Okay, so it gives them more food per area. It means that more people can group together and then they are assured of food in that area. Another advantage of farming lifestyle is that it is largely sedentary, unlike the mobility of hunter gathering. So, like what I've mentioned earlier, when you are hunter gatherer, once you have depleted the resources in an area, you would have to find another place where you would start hunting again. But in the case of farming, there is a cycle. Okay, as long as you are able to preserve or do it the right way, then you are assured of food year round. Okay, so those are the reasons as to why hunter gatherers have shifted to farming. Okay, now we have this farming language dispersal hypothesis, and this hypothesis is where most anthropologists and historians take the the reasons as to how farming and agriculture has started in the Philippines, and we owe it to the Austronesian language family group as the primary evidence for that. Now, when we talk of the Austronesian language family, it is a group of languages spoken throughout parts of Southeast Asia, including Taiwan, Malaysia, and the Philippines. Now, the history of this language family covers the time of pre-Austronesian and Austronesian. Speaking people were hunter gatherers. They began in China, then colonized Taiwan, and then dispersed southwards towards the Philippines and into northern Indonesia. In an ethno-linguistic sense, Austronesian-speaking people began 5,500 years ago in Taiwan, and they were presumed to be farmers. So, the hypothesis states that these Austronesian people came from Taiwan and then migrated towards several parts of Asia, including the Philippines. Okay. Now, with the Austronesian language family and its dispersal in mind, several early thinkers such as Peter Bellwood and Colin Renfrew proposed one of the first ideas highlighting the origin of agriculture in island Southeast Asia. Bellwood and Renfrew argued that because of agriculture, the Austronesian-speaking people migrated from their homeland in Taiwan to the Philippines and Indo-Malaysia, and then reached to the Pacific after passing New Guinea. Now, Proto-Austronesian, a reconstruction of the Austronesian language, shows evidences of repetition in many of the same vocabulary terms for agriculture, such as rice, millet, and pigs. They are very similar across languages in Southeast Asia, and that is a proof of the migration and probably passing the technology of farming from one place to another or from one group of people to another. Now, Austronesian speaking people migrated to regions inhabited by hunter gatherers and populated the area and then replaced them to some degree. Now, the approximate date of when Austronesian speaking people began migrating from Taiwan to Philippines is between 4,500 to 4,000 years ago. So, this is one of the early hypotheses proving the movement of the technology of farming here in the Philippines. There are also archaeological evidences, and in an archaeological study conducted at Old Kiyangan village in Ifugao, archaeologists analyzed charred organic residues from two earthenware sherds were analyzed in order to evaluate when rice agriculture as well as cooking rice occurred in the Philippines. Now, the results of the examination were that the earthenware sherds were not from pots used to cook rice. Instead, they were used for cooking starchy vegetables such as taro and yams and more. It shows that during the pre-colonial times, the Ifugao used a wide range of food resources that did not include rice. So, in a way, this findings from Old Kiangan village disputes the hypothesis that we mentioned earlier, because according to them, the findings showed that um, what was evident, okay, in Ifugao were taro and yams. Okay, and they cultivated starchy vegetables and domesticated animals like pigs, water buffalo, and chicken. They most likely kept a relationship between neighboring communities to hunt in order to obtain their protein, while at the same time clearing land to grow their crops. These pieces of evidence support the idea that early people in Ifugao were able to thrive without rice agriculture or intensive agriculture in general up until the point of colonization, when people densities heightened, suggesting a latter model for the emergence of intensive agriculture. So, Stephen Cabado argues that taro preceded wet rice agriculture in the Ifugao terraces, and that taro is indigenous to the Philippine archipelago. Taro brings a different perspective to the emergence and spread of agriculture, in that it moves away from the general idea that domestication occurred through a sequence of events that began with root vegetable cultivation and came to a peak with intensive wet rice agriculture. The previous models about the emergence of agriculture in Isaiah credit the Austronesian dispersal for the introduction of taro and rice in those regions. However, new evidence exhibits that taro has pan Southeast Asian origins and can be traced much earlier than the spread of Austronesian speaking people. So, this um, Kayangan village findings again disputes the Austronesian hypothesis. Okay, if this evidence is approved and taro is shown to have been present much earlier, it changes the perspective on how agriculture spread. Now, anthropologist Martin Chang found taro tissue in Cagayan dating between 3940 BC to 3379 BC, suggesting that taro may have existed in the Philippines during a time that was much earlier than when taro agriculturists began spreading to mainland Southeast Asia. Now, the first evidence of rice found in the Philippines dates between 2025 BC and 1432 BC. This taro first model is only indirect evidence in favor of the cultivation of taro before the Austronesian speaking people. So, as we all know, taro is a tropical plant grown primarily as a root vegetable, and we know this locally as gabi. Okay, a popular recipe for taro is called laing, which originates from Bicol region into southern Luzon. Now, another archaeological evidence, okay, um, according to anthropologist Victor Paz, among the archaeological research done in the Philippines, there has not been enough concrete evidence to point towards an early presence of rice agriculture. Now, there is, however, archaeological evidence for the presence of rice remains in the Andarayan site located in northern Luzon, which raises discussion on whether or not rice was cultivated at an earlier time than once thought. Now, excavations have revealed carbonized rice inclusions such as rice husks and stems in earthenware. Now, this discovery represents dry rice cropping instead of the most common wet rice agriculture seen in Luzon. Even with this archaeological find, the lack of rice samples makes it difficult to attain a comprehensive study. So basically, what Victor Paz is trying to say is that this Andarayan site findings, okay, shows that there were rice from rice husks, implying that these were brought in due to trade, okay, associated with foreign trade and not um, coming from our own, or we did not plant them here. We did not have the agricultural technology back then, but rather acquired rice from husks through trade. Okay, so that's what the Andarayan archaeological evidences is saying. So those are some of the theories and archaeological findings. And now let's go to the Philippines agriculture as of today. Currently, the Philippines remains the fifth largest rice importer. So let me emphasize that we are importing, not exporting. Okay? And however, there is not much land left for rice agriculture in the Philippines, because a lot of land areas that were originally used for agriculture has been turned to commercial spaces. Okay, and there is also a factor of unpredictability and unfavorable weather conditions here. Okay, a typhoon known as Yolanda struck in 2013. We are all familiar with that, and it has damaged 2% of rice crops in the Philippines. Now, adverse weather conditions continue to threaten the rice cultivation. So that's the sad part of our history. And as of today, rice continues to hold important cultural value in the Philippines. Now, urban legends about rice, including the story of Alamat ng Palay, cherish rice as a gift of life and attribute it to keeping Filipinos grounded, healthy, and fed. In the past, rice was thought of as a prestige food and was only made in small quantities for spiritual rituals. Now, because of this, it is believed that rice was reserved only for chiefs and the elite members of the tribe, and was a main factor in establishing social stratification and geographic differentiation. After the arrival of the Spanish and the plow technology they brought with them, agricultural development occurred and rice was being cultivated in larger volumes. Eventually, rice was no longer a prestige product or a seasonal offering, and instead was grown all year round, and by 19th century, rice surpluses allowed for the product to be exported. All right, that's it. I hope you have learned something from this short introduction and discussion of agricultural economics. And for more videos like this, go ahead and check out my playlist. And we will continue the discussion of agricultural economics in the next and succeeding videos. With that, thank you so much and see you on the next video. Thanks and God bless.